everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sam, and I am going to be moderating this webinar. You will see me throw some very useful links into the chat throughout the webinar. They will lead you to our Northrop Grumman retirement guide, as well as a full webinar library of all of our past Northrop Grumman webinars. And it'll also link you to an appointment calendar where you can book an appointment with an advisor. Today, we're going to be talking about what effects the interest rates may have on your pension. Our Northrop Grumman focused advisor, Wesley Boudreaux, will discuss calculating your pension and choosing the best retirement date. After the webinar, we will be having a short Q&A session. So if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A box and we will get to as many as we can. It is completely anonymous, just so you know. And before I bring our speaker on, I'd like to just remind you that although we work very closely with both active and retired members of the Northrop Grumman community, we are not affiliated nor endorsed with Northrop Grumman. We are a completely independent group of financial advisors. And with that, I think I'd like to just introduce you to our speaker, Wesley Boudreaux. Wesley.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that introduction, Sam. And just as she said, we have worked extensively with Northrop Grumman employees and retirees, but again, that doesn't mean we're endorsed or employed by Northrop Grumman. But we're going to dig into the pension plan today, which is definitely something that I think a lot of you love to kind of dig into the details on. So if you have questions afterwards, just circle back with us. We'll be happy to go through those with you. But we're going to introduce again who the retirement group is first. For those of you who may not have sat down with us in a while, we'll go over the various different pension elements because there's a lot of different options kind of built into this Northrop Grumman plan. So let's go through that. First and foremost, again, for those of you who do not know who we are, haven't sat down or talked with us in a while, again, the retirement group's an independent financial advisory firm that focus on working with corporate employees and helping them transition into retirement. We've been doing this for actually a little bit over 30 years at this point. We've done a lot of work with Northrop Grumman over that time frame as well. So what that does, it allows some of our Northrop Grumman focused advisors the ability to have a deeper understanding of your benefits plans, whether it be the pension, which we'll talk about today, the 401k, healthcare, retiree, medical, life insurance, retirement options, things like that. So our overall goal is to help you pre-retirement, make sure you, whenever you do decide to retire, you maximize all the benefits that Northrop Grumman is going to give you. And by doing that, hopefully it can get you off the right foot on the management process in retirement. So obviously, if you need help there, we'd love to work with you on that aspect as well. But if anything, take us up on our complimentary cash flow analysis, which is the way we can tell you, are you on the right path for the retirement goals you have? You might say, hey, I'm thinking about retiring at 60, or I'm going to retire at 65, or I'm going to retire when my son graduates college. There may be some different emotional reasons or non-financial reasons as to when you want to retire. But our job is to help you look at the financial aspect, let you know, have you saved enough? Are you on the right path to meet those retirement goals? Could you retire earlier if you wanted to potentially? What's the best option on that pension as far as the different choices, which we'll go through here today as well. So there's a lot of different things that go into it, but that cash flow analysis is something that's complimentary. Give us about 10, 15 minutes to gather some data from you and give us about a week to put that together. And we'll spend some time going through that to help you see where you stand. And in turn, that'll help you with the decisions of retirement and then also potentially the investment decisions post-retirement as well. Now, we do have offices throughout the country, so rest assured, if you need to sit down with somebody face-to-face, we can probably accommodate that. But obviously this day and age, especially post-pandemic, it's very easy to do a lot of these meetings via web meetings, phone calls, email, whatever your preferred communication is. Just go ahead and let us know, and we'll be happy to accommodate you. So getting into the pension plan or the pension plans, if you would, we'll talk first about the eligibility, what it means to be eligible for the pension plans. And then we'll also talk about your actual benefit in the calculation process for a lot of these that we have to go through, whether it be the Part A, B, C, or D. And we'll go through all those for you today as well. So first and foremost, eligibility. If you want to go all the way back to being eligible for the pension A, you have to be working or hired, about 23 years ago or so, prior to the end of 2004 was the eligibility for that. And you had to be a salaried employee in order to be eligible for that pension level A. So as far as the pension and how it works out, I'll zoom in here in just a moment on this chart, but this is a good kind of a one pager to give you all the different options between Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D. So let's kind of zoom in here and let you know where you stand here. So again, as I mentioned before, Part A was hired prior to the end of 2004. That's your classic defined benefit plan. Then there's a transition period between 2005 and 2009. In that case, there's both a Part B or a Part C, and depending upon the calculation method, whichever one comes out better for you. Part C is a cash balance plan, and Part B is going to be, again, a formula-based plan. They'll give you that. And then Part D is post 2010. And then we bring in the rule of 9 with this as well, which we'll dig into here in just a moment to kind of go through those different facets of how those pension plans work. But let's start with Part A first. So again, those of you that were there prior to 2004, again, we'll talk about the calculation method and then the benefit amount. What are you actually going to get out of this, depending upon how old you are and when you retire, when you commence your benefits and things of that nature. So this, again, like I said before, Part A is your classic defined benefit plan, in which case there's a calculation method used to determine what your single life annuity is going to be. And then from there, that single life annuity is used to calculate variations, whether you want to take a joint survivor annuity or a lump sum. That is something still available to Part A, and we'll go through the different payout options at the end of this webinar for you as well. But the formula, it's going to take a look at your final average earnings or your final average pay times 1.5% times your years of service up to 35 years. So that was, far ago. We've got, probably not hitting that at this point anymore, but up to 35 years. And if you worked longer than that, over 35 years, that calculation method drops a little bit from 1.5% down to 1.33%. And then, like all these pension plans, there is what's called a Social Security offset that you need to be aware of. Now, what happens is they're essentially going in there and clawing back the Social Security payments they've made for you. Because as an employee, you're paying half your FICA taxes, and Northrop Grumman is paying the other half. And so that formula portion is going to do the same final average earnings, but it's going to be times 0.4% up to that 35-year period for you. So this is something to kind of have in the back of your mind. We don't come across it too often anymore because the age of this formula, but let's assume that maybe you work somewhere else in the public sector. Maybe you were a teacher or something of that nature prior to joining Northrop Grumman, and your Social Security offset may not actually be as large as what they're calculating. So if you have questions on this, let us know. We've had situations where we've gone in here and run and found people that had changed different jobs or weren't with Northrop Grumman as long for their entire career. So their Social Security calculation estimate was higher than what it was in reality. So we were able to get them adjustments in there and actually increase their pension, either the annuity or the lump sum as well. So again, if you weren't with Northrop Grumman your entire career, especially if you're in the public sector, give us a call. We'll be happy to kind of go through that with you. So the question also becomes, okay, how much do I get? What am I going to get out of this pension? And for the Part A, it's essentially if you made it to age 60 or you commenced your benefits at age 60 or later, then you're getting 100% of that payout. So again, it's going to depend upon different age factors, but essentially, if you go earlier than age 60, it's about a 4% drop year by year. Now, again, it's not just a flat 4% every year; it's calculated out on to the decimal point. So if you leave at 59 and a half, it's not going to be 4%. It's going to be 2%. If you live at 59 and a half in a day, it's going to be a little bit less than that 2% or so as well. But so when they run that estimate, it'll give you that calculation as well. And keep that in mind. It's based upon commencing those benefits. So in theory, you could retire at 58. And if you want to hold off on commencing your benefits till 60, so you get 100% of that, that is something that you could do as well. So again, be cognizant of that. And that's for the Part A. There's going to be different age parameters for other parts of this pension as well. So let's dig into some of this. We'll talk about Part B and Part C. If you recall that flow chart, if you would, that we had up a couple slides ago, this is during the transition of 2005 through 2009, where we're going to look at comparing another pension formula versus a cash balance plan. And the benefit here is you don't have to pick or choose. They're going to actually use the one that's going to generate the best pension for you for that period of time. So again, that time we talked about was between 2005 and 2009. So the change went into effect for January 2010. And again, this was going to be if you're with Northrop Grumman salaried, or also for Synoptics employees in the Northrop Grumman retirement plan B as well. So the B formula is going to, so again, the eligibility is if you're a participant in Part A before 2004, they do preserve the Part A. And then the program effective date, as we just saw on that slide before, was starting at the beginning of 2005. Now, as far as the formula actually is from all intents and purposes, it looks the exact same as what the Part A is. Again, it's going to be a 1.5% times your final average paid times the years of service. Excuse me. However, what you don't see here under the hood or under the radar is what they did change is a little bit of the qualification or the ways they use that final average pay and how they calculate that out. So we're not going to dig into details there, but that's where there's a little bit of a nuance and differences as far as what counts towards pay, differences between bonuses and things like that and stuff. So that's the difference with Part A and Part B. But when we go into Part C, that becomes the cash balance plan. This is what we saw a lot of companies do, have done over the last, decade and a half or 20 years, if you would. You got to face it. What happens is for these pension plans, which are great to have for employees. And obviously, I think most of you've seen, over time, a lot of companies have reduced those or eliminated them. And part of it's because of a big unknown. They don't know how much it's going to cost the company in the long run. If Northrop Grumman goes in there and says, okay, I've got an employee that's retiring and we have to pay them $3,000 a month for the rest of their life, how do we calculate that? We have to look at actuary tables and just assume people will live to their life expectancy, but you might have an employee that lives to 100, so it costs you more than somebody who unfortunately passes away at 80 or 75 or something like that. So a lot of these companies went to what's called a cash balance plan, which is more of a known, where they know what they're putting into the plan. And then the growth and everything is dependent upon interest rates and credits that way. So they're not on the hook anymore for that. So think about like your 401k plan. You get a company match in there and it's going to grow or shrink based upon your investments. In this case, they put that cash balance contribution there. It's going to grow based upon the interest credits. So again, the cash balance, they look at what your age and years of service are in order to determine the paid credit they're going to put into there for each year. And then they'll use the treasury interest rates and stuff in order to calculate out the interest payments or the interest growth, if you would, on that cash balance plan over time. Now, as far as the breakdown, as far as how much they're going to put in there, that's all going to depend upon your age and years of service. So if we look at the first column on this chart, that's going to be your points. So let's say if somebody is 50 and they've been there for 20 years, so 50 plus 20 is going to be 70. So you go and you look at there on the third from the bottom line as far as what their credits are going to be. And their credits are going to be different from each specific person based upon if you were heritage before 2000 or if you're post 2000, if you're newer. And it's going to be differences for your base pay or your all pay, and then also excess pay. If you have some excess pay there, it's actually going to be a little bit lower in that calculation. So again, we're not going to pretend to go through all the nuances of this, but just to let you know, this is how that formula works. And what they do is they run these side by side, the Part B and the Part C, and they're going to compare which is greater for you. And we'll go through a basic example to give you a little bit of an idea of that. So let's assume somebody in this case was 58 years old. They've got 28 years of service. So you add those two numbers up, they're at points are at 86, which was, if we go back to that chart, was the bottom line. That was the maximum point value you can get. Their compensation was $70,000. So if we go through the formula and we go through the Part B, they've got a breakdown between their pre-62 and their post-62. So that's $402 a month and $310 a month. But if we run that Part C with the rule of 9, which we'll get into in just a moment, it comes out to a little bit lower, just shy of $300. So if they were to look at this and you were looking at retirement, then obviously they're going to give you the Part B because it's a better calculation method for you than what the Part C is going to be on there. Okay, so again, we can walk you through the estimation process and kind of dig into your specific numbers, but this gives you at least a high level basic example, if you would. Now moving into the rule of 9, and that moves into Part D. We'll go through some examples there, but the rule of 9 is essentially just a divisor factor. It's another way to look at age factor as far as when you're going to elect your pension or commit your benefits and what percentage you're going to get, instead of doing the percentages or using the divisor of 9 to calculate it out. But in the end, it comes out similar to how we looked at the Part A as well. So the rule of 9 is going to be, you take your cash balance value, you divide that by your conversion factor of 9. It's not divided by 9, but the conversion factor. And we'll show you a chart here in a screen or two on what those conversion factors are. But 9 is going to be if you're 65 and then the conversion factor gets higher, the earlier you are, which effectively means it's going to reduce that potential pension. So you take that conversion factor of 9, divide that by 12, and that's going to equal out your lifetime payment. Again, this only applies to Part C and Part D, and we'll get through. We'll take a look at kind of what those breakdowns are for you here in just one moment. So another thing, if you're going to get that conversion factor of Part 9, it's going to depend upon a couple things. You're going to need to be eligible for that and have been there for 10 years of vesting service in order to do that. and be post age 55. So this kicks in after age 55. But we look at this chart here on the screen, you'll see it goes from 55 all the way to 65 or older. And at 65 or older, that's where you get that 9. Okay, so again, that's where you take that cash balance plan divided by 9 divided by 12 in order to get your monthly payment, which we'll give you a quick example shortly. Now, the difference is, let's say somebody who is 60, instead of dividing by 9 first, they're dividing actually in this case by 10.25, which again, bigger number means a smaller result. So that comes out to roughly about 12%, give or take, difference between age 65 and 60. You go all the way down to age 55, it's closer to about a 22% drop between age 65 and age 55. So again, you can go through, do the math, but again, we can run the estimate for you and show you where it is. But again, essentially, if we go back to part A, you're looking at age 60. Part C and D, you're looking at age 65 for the max pension benefit you're going to get there. So, quick example. Excuse me. So, quick example here, just using some simple numbers, $100,000. Let's assume that you have retirement at age 55. And you actually decide to pinch your benefits there at age 55 as well, versus deferring those out possibly. And the total cash balance plan in this case is somebody's got $100,000 stored away in their cash balance plan. So at 55, we saw that chart before, the divisor factor is going to be 11.5%. So you take that 100,000, divide it by 11.5, and then divide it by 12. That gives you that monthly annuity of $724. So if this person was 65 instead, we would be dividing by 9, then dividing by 12, and it might come out to about, I think, $925, maybe about $200 more a month or so. So that's where you kind of see those calculations. This is off 100,000. So obviously, if you had a higher cash balance plan, those numbers, that monthly benefit would grow and be higher there as well. So we've talked about a lot of these different plans. There's part A, the part B, the part C, the part D. But the question is, okay, based upon these plan structures, how am I going to access my pension? What are the what are the payment options on there? So again, these are all pension plans. Excuse me, sorry. So these are all pension plans, and again, the normal factor there, or the perceived payment, is going to be taking an annuity and getting that payment over your lifetime. However, some of you that do have the benefit of Part A do have a lump sum option. Let's kind of go through these line by line here, if you would. But again, the reason to set up a pension is to provide that single life annuity for the rest of your life. So the calculation for all these is going to dig into, okay, how much am I going to get for myself for the rest of my life? From that point, all these other factors are calculated off of that. So let's run through the numbers and assume that maybe after it's all said and done, I'm going to get $3,500 a month for the rest of my life. Well, maybe I'm married. I don't want to just worry about myself, because if I get hit by a bus in 5 years, or something happens earlier in life, I want to make sure that my spouse is taken care of, or maybe beneficiaries or something like that. So that's where you can go in there and do a joint survivor annuity. And for the most part, they've all got the same option. There's a little nuance, in which case the 75% survivability is not available in Part D. It's only available in the others. But so what would happen is, let's say instead of that $3,500 example I gave you, single life annuity, now if I'm bringing my wife into the calculation, they're not going to give us $3,500 because they're paying out over 2 lives. There's a greater chance of somebody living longer. So instead of $3,500, it might be $3,000 or $2,700, $3,200. It all depends upon your ages when you run that calculation. And so if I were to do a 100% joint survivor, that's going to be a lower number. Maybe it's $2,700 that I get, and if I pass away, my wife will continue to get that. If we did, let's say 50%, and maybe I would get $3,000 a month, and if I passed away, she would start getting $1,500 a month. So that's where that cash flow analysis we talked about comes into play, where we can review that, kind of show you the different options of joint survivor annuities, how it plays out. If you want to, unfortunately, pick different days that we're going to pass away, we assume most of the time the men will pass away earlier. But again, all this goes into longevity. And there's another kind of unique one that Part D has, and that's the age 62 and the age 65 level income. Not many pension plans have this, but this is an option where if you retire prior to Social Security, you're going to get a little bit higher pension, but when Social Security kicks in, it's going to lower itself so that same dollar amount levels out. So let's say your pension amount was $2,000 a month, and your Social Security was going to be $1,000. You'll be getting $3,000 from Northrop Grumman up until Social Security kicks in. Then Social Security is going to pay you $1,000, and Northrop Grumman will drop off and pay you $2,000. So that $3,000 income stays level throughout retirement. And I guess another thing to keep in mind with all the inflationary pressure we're seeing, again, these are fixed payments. There's no cost of adjustment in here. So if you're getting $3,000, $4,000 a month now, it's not going to stretch as far in 10, 20, 30 years. So just keep that in mind when it comes for planning. And lastly, the Part A, if you are still a participant or part of that, you do have the option to take a lump sum What they do here is that's where interest rates come into play, where they take a look at, okay, based upon this formula, your annuity is, let's say, $3,000 a month. How old are you? What are the current interest rates? And let's calculate the net present value to determine how much of a lump sum we have to give you for you to essentially go out there and recreate that same annuity. So when we were during the pandemic with interest rates low, the lump sums were much higher. Now the interest rates have come up. These lump sums have gone down, but it's still worth review if you have that lump sum option to run through that cash flow analysis and do them side by side. So you see how things look over the next 10, 20, 30 years down the road versus just how it looks now. So to kind of wrap it up and just kind of going back to that cash flow analysis, like I said before, that's probably one of the most important things you can take us up on. It's all complimentary. But right now, about 3/4 of Americans over 50 don't even have a written plan. So if you can spend about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe even shorter, if you got some of the information already ready, let us go ahead and put that report together for you. Give us about a week to get it back to you, and we'll set some time to sit down and go through that. But again, like I said, we can look at various scenarios. Maybe you've got a desired retirement date. Maybe you want to see, okay, should I take the pension as an annuity or a lump sum? Should I defer my pension? What type of annuity should I take with it? Should I look at working longer? Could I leave earlier? We'll go through all those different options for you. But everything is kind of dependent upon what you give us. So the biggest thing we'll focus on is making sure you understand your budget. Because again, we want you to be conservative in telling us what you think you'll spend in retirement, but we can walk you through and help you through that entire process as well. So with that, excuse me, I'll wrap it up, and then we'll see if Sam had any questions come through. But before I do that, there's a couple QR codes here on the screen. So if you got your cell phone on, we'll leave this up during the Q&A, but there's one in order to schedule a meeting with myself or one of the other Northrop Grumman focused advisors. There's also one to follow us on our LinkedIn page, where you can get into our specific Northrop Grumman LinkedIn page. So you have updates as far as like new webinars are coming out, company plan changes, interest rate updates, things like that. We'll get those up to you through LinkedIn as well. And any questions, always reach that info@theretirementgroup.com, or you can email us. You can email us at info@theretirementgroup.com, or pick up the phone and call us at 800-900-5867. All right, Sam, do we have any questions come through?
Yeah, we had a few good questions come through. The first one is, what is the Part A pension formula and how does it work?
Okay, excuse me, clear my throat. So we went over that. That was the first slide that we had as far as the pension. So again, that's your classic defined benefit plan, in which case there's a formula to determine what your single life annuity is going to be. And then from there, that's where you can deviate whether you want to do a joint survivor or a period certain. I think I skipped over a period certain. There's a period certain option where you can do a 10-year period certain. What that means is you're going to be guaranteed for at least 10 years, even if you pass away earlier, to have your beneficiaries paid out. But the formula is actually, again, that 1.5% times your final average pay, times your years of service, and then minus that Social Security offset. So they go through there, look at your final average pay, they multiply it out to figure out what your specific annuity is going to be. So let's assume that annuity comes out to $2,500 a month. From there, you can decide, okay, I'll take that $2,500 single life annuity. Maybe I want a 10-year period certain. So instead of $2,500, it might be a little bit lower because they're guaranteeing for at least 10 years. Maybe I want to join survivor to cover my significant other, or maybe I want to do a lump sum. That's where we have to really look at the interest rates and what the best options are. Last 2 years, when the interest rates have been low for the pandemic, those lump sums were very attractive. They're not as attractive anymore, but it's still worth reviewing. Sorry, it's still worth reviewing, especially in that cash flow analysis. So hopefully that answers your question.
Alrighty, thank you. Second question coming in. I heard if you were hired before the year 2000, it is different than being hired post 2000. How does it affect the calculation of pension benefits?
Okay. Yeah. So if we go back again to one of those other slides, we had the chart. Remember we had the Part C with all the different columns and stuff on there. And there were differences between heritage, standard, and new. That's where the hired kind of comes into play as far as a calculation method. If you recall on that screen, there were different interest rates. Now that was a pretty busy screen, but there were different interest rates for those different columns, if you would, based upon your years of service and your age. So let's say somebody who was hired before 2000 is going to be heritage, where you run the numbers to find out what their age and years of service are to get their points. And then you go across the board to find out what their paid credits are going to be. Their paid credits are going to be higher than somebody who was hired after 2000. That's what that chart kind of breaks down. But let's face it, we can go through the calculations with you, but you either were or you weren't. So it is what it is. But we can at least kind of go through those and show you how it is, unless you had some bridging issue where you were hired before and came back that you may need to dig into. But again, it's based upon those that have been around longer, get a little bit better a little bit better treatment, if you would, on the pay credits in Part C. And then obviously, if you were there before, you've got a longer term through the Part A, which is going to increase your pension calculation and also the ability for a lump sum there as well.
All righty. The next one, I am confused. How many years of service do I have to be employed to retire without age penalties in the pension program?
Okay. So again, there's 4 different pension programs, if you would, that we went through. So there's a little bit differences with this, but generally speaking, let's just say 10 years. I mean, it depends upon, it was a shorter time period if you're Part A, but again, that Part A was for somebody who's been around for a long time. So that's already out the window. But if we look at that Part D, it's that 10-year eligibility for the rule of 9 is what you need to focus on. Once you get past 65, then it's usually available for anybody. Again, the vesting is a little bit different based upon age, but quick rule of thumb, you want to look at making to age 55 and having 10 years of service if you want to be eligible for the pension. And then again, based upon the day you retire and the day you commence your benefits, that age factor could be a age penalty where you're not going to get 100% of the pension. It's going to be reduced, and that's where we went through those different 2 different screens on that reduction, the divisor of 9 versus the Part A. But so keep in the back of your mind, age 55 plus 10 is what you want to be thinking about. But if you have questions or you're close to that, let us know. We can walk you through how to run the estimates and see where you fall into place and show you how different it would be, maybe 1 or 2 years of staying versus leaving too early.
Okay, last one. I know you went over this a little bit, but what is the rule of 9 or 10 in the pension program?
Okay. So yeah, so again, it's the rule of 9. That's for Part D, part of the cash balance plan, when they do that conversion factor to calculate, okay, what is your monthly annuity going to be? So again, the cash balance plan, it's built up based upon pay credits they give you and then interest as it rolls. So we'll go back to that example because it was a simple $100,000. Let's assume you've built up a cash balance of $100,000. Then in order to determine how much of an annuity they're going to give you, that's where that rule of 9 comes into play. If you were 65 or older, the number 9 is the divisor. If you're younger, the divisor is going to be higher. So again, the higher the number, the lower the actual outcome is going to be. So that's where it's kind of the age penalties come into play. It's very similar to the Part A, where it's a 4% decline each year, but it's just a difference of semantics, the way they're using a whole number for the divisor factor. So I think the example we did was somebody was 55, instead of a divisor of 9, it was a divisor of 11.5. Somebody who's 60, it's a divisor of 10.5. So again, I think I mentioned before, that somebody who's 60 versus 65, it's about a 22%, or about a 12% drop or decline. So again, essentially, if you decide to commence your benefit prior to age 65 on Part D, then it's going to be a reduction compared to that. But 9 is the divisor they start off with and use, and it goes up from there.
All righty, that was all the questions, Wesley.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate everybody giving us those questions and joining us today. As I said before, even though we've worked extensively with Northrop Grumman employees and retirees, we are not employed by Northrop Grumman nor endorsed by them. But should you have any questions, want to dig into your situation, not just the pension plan, again, I mentioned the 401k or retiree medical benefits, or just run that cash flow analysis, reach out to us and let us know. Again, you can reach that 1-800-900-5867. Thank you very much, and we hope you have a great day.